In the previous lesson, we identified enduring understandings and wrote them as complete statements in propositional form. Example, students will understand that blah, blah, blah. This week, we'll turn our attention to learning objectives. Unlike the enduring understandings we wrote last week, learning objectives are written from a perspective of what the student will be able to do rather than what the student will understand. This is a subtle but important shift, and it moves us towards the next step in understanding by design, defining evidence of learning. So the objectives for this module are you'll be able to differentiate between various categories of understanding. You'll be able to evaluate and discuss different learning taxonomies, comparing strengths and weaknesses of each, determine acceptable evidence of learning, also translate a statement of enduring understanding into measurable learning objectives. And number 5, you'll be able to discuss your measurable learning objectives and provide feedback on those of your peers. So all too often, when we think about how to evaluate what a student understands, we fall back on the familiar and easy rut of some sort of quiz or exam or something that's easy to measure, but it may not tell us exactly what our students truly understand. The assessment may tell us what they recall or what they remember, but it doesn't reveal their deeper understandings. So we'll be talking about some assessments more later in the course. But even this week, as you're writing your learning objectives and thinking about evidences of understanding, I need you to think about what a student can do to prove to you that they actually understand the concepts that you're addressing. In contrast to the idea of testing or exams, the UBD text repeatedly mentions the value of performance as evidence of student understanding. The concept here is that if we ask a student to perform a real-world task, we'll have a better means of evaluating what they actually understand than if we have them take a quiz or an exam about the content. So for example, if you're in an instructional design course, it makes more sense for you to go about performing the task of creating an actual learning module than it does for you to take a test or a quiz that asks you to recall what the 6 facets of understanding might be. This can be applied to most any idea or subject that you're teaching. So the idea here is to have students practice what you're asking them to learn. And that learning product is what you end up evaluating when you look at what their understanding actually is. A buzzword or phrase that you may come across in relation to this concept is authentic assessment. Just to give you another example, consider the student driver. You don't want to just give a written exam, you actually want to see them driving. It allows the student to perform the task, and then their direct performance can be evaluated as to how they are able to perform that skill. So the concept here is really very logical. As we prepare students to think and live in the real world, we want them to be practicing the things and tasks that they'll be doing as professionals, including the decisions that they'll be making. If you're going for a surgical procedure, for instance, I'm going to bet that you're hoping that surgeon has had some kind of authentic assessment in their past, rather than just quizzes and written exams. This relates to nearly any subject that you can imagine. Learning by doing is powerful. What I'm asking you to do this week is to think about what you'll be asking your students to do in the real world. Think about the tasks that are real or authentic that they'll be performing in the real world when they've completed your course. Lastly, now that I have you thinking about authentic assessment and real world performance and their value in the classroom, I want you to take just a moment to point out that doing something correctly doesn't automatically prove that a student understands why they're doing it that way. So in the context of real world subject matter, and in the context of real world tasks that students will be performing when they leave your course, I also want you to think about using the 6 facets of understanding, or the verbs from Bloom's taxonomy, to write your learning objectives, to specify what it is you want the students to demonstrate. So as you conclude the lesson this week, I hope this will be helpful to you in thinking about levels of understanding and definitions for those levels, and in addition, evidences for those levels of understanding.